Yes. Hey, everybody. It is Tuesday morning. It's 8 o'clock, and that means trash talk. And I'm here, and Brandon, I think, is here, wiping his
Maybe.
eyes out, drinking the coffee. Yay.
My coffee's cold at this point, man.
I'm the same way. The first sip is hot. And after
It's
that,
just,
you set it down and walk away, and you come back, and it's lukewarm, and then it's cold.
I almost made a new batch, but I'm not doing it.
Now you
I'm moving.
pick one up when you get to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I called you and I said, hey, we usually make a list in advance of things we kind of want to talk about, and I went to see the Sound of Freedom over the weekend, and I mean, I was mesmerized with the movie. I was shocked by the movie. I'm still trembling because of the whole idea and story of human trafficking. It's just this is 2023, and I mean, I understand that there are some cultures where it's kind of accepted to a certain degree. Uh, a minor degree, but some cultures in Asia, some cultures in Africa, even in the Caribbean and Central and South America. But I was blown away when I saw the statistics, even about the United States. And
Well, it's we can say that it's 2023, so why is it happening? But it's very simple why it's happening. It's because it's a billion-dollar more business. It's easier. I know that sounds crazy. It's easier to have access, especially when you're talking about children. Human trafficking as a whole is probably one of the worst, most uh, disgusting stains on humanity. But when you're talking about children, it's almost easier because of the access with computers, with social media, with phones, I mean, it's almost easier to groom and target, and then based on the movie, and we'll get into that. Um, they're these guys are, I say guys, these people out there are not dumb. They're smart. Unfortunately, they're using their brain power for the sins of the world. But um, and we live in a state that continuously makes the list for one of the top 10 states for human trafficking. And it makes sense if you look at it from the fact that we're so close to a border. I
exactly.
mean, California's on there as well. Michigan's on there as well. And if you look at that, well, look at the position of those states and why, you know.
And what one of the things that is fascinating to me is it's a kind of I hate to say a two-way street. It's a three-way street. There is importing of children. There's exporting of children, and there is sex trafficking within our own borders. And
Oh,
and
absolutely.
it and
Yeah.
it's I mean, human trafficking is defined as anyone under 18, as child trafficking, at
That's
least.
trafficking, not human trafficking. Yeah.
Yeah, and all, but uh, it's like you said, it's a huge business because they prey upon the weak, sometimes, or in the case of this movie, they do one of two things. They simply just kidnap the kids right off the streets,
And that
and
happens.
and
That
they
happens
and
a lot.
yeah, and they disappear. Or the premise of the movie, which we encourage everyone watching and listening, to see this movie. And also, I will say it several times: do not leave the theater until the very, very last frame of the movie, after all the credits are run, because there is an extremely important message by the actor in the lead role, James. I forgot the last name.
The Caviezel.
Yeah, that he says at the very, very end, after all of the credits. So don't leave the theater until after. And it's amazing. This movie was just released about a month ago, and
Yeah, it
all.
was in July, the week before the 4th of July, or the week of the 4th of July. I can't remember.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it was mixed reviews and all, but the public started to accept it and really and it really took off. But the premise in the movie, which we've seen happen for decades, is uh one of these predators comes in and sees these cute little kids and says, "Oh, your child would just be great in a magazine or in a movie. We'd love to have them come to a photo shoot." And all, and the parents think, "Oh, my kid's going to be famous and I'll be wealthy," and that's the start of the end.
well, and that you're talking about the woman that was, so that woman, here's a couple of things. There's a lot to talk about when unpacking this movie besides the movie. And I have to start off this way. I think the biggest issue that, because there's very definitive views on this movie. There's a side and a group of people, whatever, that are very much not supporting this movie, very much against this movie, very much going out there saying it's a propaganda film, it's a QAnon film, all these sort of things. I think it's interesting that people say that when they haven't seen it, and they're basing it off of the people that put it together. Now,
Right.
from a guy that has seen it, you've seen it, I will say this. I think I'm not the biggest Caviezel fan in the world. I think that there has been some things that I don't care what he believes in, that's fine. I don't care what anybody believes in, to be quite frank. You do you. Who am I to judge anybody?
Right.
But he has said some things that have been a little outlandish, even for me, that I'm like, ooh, okay. I get it. Mel Gibson, we know the history of Mel Gibson. He has also said some things. He's also done some really good things. So I think the biggest issue with this movie is that if other people made it, number one, I still think it would have trouble going in to theaters because Hollywood doesn't want a film like this out there. Number two, I think that those people that are going around saying it's a propaganda film would probably watch it more. Then they're also saying that this whole Timothy Ballard thing is false and this and that and whatever. Okay, well, some of it is made up for the movies. Yes, he did not.
Embellished. Yeah.
Yeah, embellished. Yes. Spoiler alert. He did not ever kill a person in the movie. He does. Ballard didn't. Okay. He did not go into the woods alone to look for a kid. He did not do that. That's true. There were 55, I believe, kids that were rescued in this particular mission, but this mission was over 3 different cities in 1 hour. We are looking at a piece of that mission.
Right.
So when he says 123 kids, he's not talking about what was in the movie. He's talking about the big mission. And I think it's interesting that people get so caught up on facts when it comes to a movie, but we watch other stuff that are based on a true story and nobody says anything about it. People have an issue because they don't like the people that made it. They don't like what they preach. They don't like what they believe. And I'm going to go on my soapbox, but these people are the same people that sit there and watched 123 films that were done by Harvey Weinstein, who's a convicted rapist. And they don't care. They don't have a problem with it. But God forbid. So I think you can watch a movie and separate it from your beliefs and look at the core problem here. And the problem is trafficking. Why are we arguing about this? Like, I don't get it.
Well, and also, and I'll go out on a limb and say it. One of the reasons I think that we have seen such a slow movement in curbing sex trafficking is because I believe that there is too much of a political involvement in it. Again, we're talking money, folks, and if there's money involved, then things get stalled politically, governmentally, personally, and all for the sake of money.
You have countries, you have people in this country, but you have countries that make their living off of arms dealing, trafficking. Look, we are
exactly.
We are sending trillions to a country right now that, if you look on the list, they're number one and number two as far as businesses and income goes. And I'm not saying that everybody over there is involved. I'm just saying it's human trafficking and arms dealing. And that's the Ukraine. Okay. Everything over there in Eastern Europe, from Russia, from when those countries broke up, how do you think they made their money? War torn countries have people that are displaced. You have kids that don't have parents. How easy is it to find kids that don't matter? I'm not saying that
That's
that
right.
I believe don't matter. I'm just saying that's how they view it. You have, and people think that in the United States, when they think trafficking, oh, it's in these seedy little bars. And no, it's not. It's in Beverly Hills. Okay. It's in wealthy families. It's in Frisco, Texas, people.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's like you're absolutely right. It's not in the seedy side of the inner cities, because it is also, you know, it might become called a streetwalker in the inner city, but like you said, in Beverly Hills, it's called a professional escort.
Or forget that. It's called a housemaid. It's called I mean, let's be real. It's
Yeah,
called we adopted a child. If we're talking about children trafficking, it's
right.
like everybody wants to sit there and talk about drugs, right? And they paint this image that drugs happens in streets, like the one you're sitting in front of, and it's only in the hood and this. Okay, so if it gets brought up from Mexico or other countries and made and produced in the hood, where do you think it goes to? White America. Who do you think is buying all these? White America. I mean, we
Yeah.
can't sit here and look at this trafficking thing as happening in countries like Mexico and Africa and the Ukraine, when the number one, probably the number one demand for it has got to come from the United States. And it's
Uh,
the politicians that don't do anything because, let's be real, it's like what you said, but I'm going to go out one further. They're involved in it. No, am I saying that every single politician out there is a trafficker? I'm not saying that, no. But I'm saying when you get to that level of money and billions of dollars, and you get to how can we stop this problem and really stop it, the government will never be able to stop it, just like you can't stop drugs. But you sure can do a lot more of it. And we have ignored it for too long. I haven't heard anything from this administration talk about trafficking at all. And maybe I'm wrong, but if I
yeah.
haven't heard it, it hasn't happened.
Well, you have to hope that there are agencies that are working behind the scenes that really don't want it to be talked about because they don't want to be exposed that they're doing something about it.
There is a level of that. We saw that in the movie. We know.
Yeah.
We know there's great people out there. There's great organizations that are fighting it. I think the thing with this particular movie is it's interesting to me that of all the movies that have come out in this world, some of them that very much are propaganda films, this is the movie that people chose to be divided about. Like, I'm not saying it's an enjoyable film. Okay, I did not leave the theater.
It is not an easy
It's
film
not
to
easy.
sit through.
No, and I will give them credit. They definitely didn't exploit these children on the screen. We don't, you don't need to see that. You just don't. But you know what happens. And anybody who's done research or anything like that knows what happens. So I give them credit. I'm just blown away. I haven't posted my review and I've seen it, I don't know, almost 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I haven't posted my review yet because I keep redoing it because there's so much to talk about, the angle of people that are against it to the actual movie. And it's just disturbing to me that we fight in our country. We complain and we fight about so much stuff, but yet these kids, and really it's people, but let's just focus on the kids. These kids, it happens so much. And that woman who was a former beauty queen winner, I mean, these are not people with a big cigar, 500 pounds, trying to traffic kids. These are people that look like your neighbor.
Sure. Yeah. And that's what the guy with the big cigar really wants. He
Yeah.
like you say, he's not going to be the one that's out on the street, He's got a network of people, and that network of people could be, white collar executives that are
Mhm.
involved in this, because again, it's all about the almighty dollar. And
Absolutely.
it's and what it's likened to is, we all talk about, well, we've done away with slavery. Human trafficking is modern day slavery.
It's 100% modern day slave. It's absolutely, I, we can sit here and say, okay, we as the United States have done away with this slavery section. Now we have this part to deal with. It is 100% slavery. It is, yeah, it's when you think about how many kids disappear, you hear about it all the time. You see those Amber Alerts. Now,
Right.
sometimes Amber Alerts come back and it's just a 15-year-old ran away with her boyfriend. It's it was a mistaken thing, or it's an ex-parent, one of the guardians that does something stupid. I know that happens quite a bit.
Right.
But then you never, what I always do is, and it's a horrible thing, but I like to do it, is follow up and see what else I can find about those Amber Alerts when it's like a day's gone by and I haven't heard anything. Because we get those Amber Alerts, but we never get the results, you know? And so I'll look and then it just nothing for days. And you find out that that kid just disappeared.
Well,
And you're like,
and every once in a while you will find out that the remains were found, and DNA identifies them as someone who was abducted 20 years ago. And all I mean, and we're not talking about just one or two isolated incidences. This is over and over and over again.
it happens all the time. And whatever you may think about what's going on with the lack of immigration policies or immigration, what is happening at the border, it is true. And I'm not trying to get on like how Abbott's dealing with it, but it's true. Look, cartels are massively behind trafficking. If they send 300 kids over and 10 make it, think about how much money they're making off of those kids. Think about, I mean, it's, drugs are used once, and that's where I'm going to leave it. Kids, it's, I watched a documentary and a movie, but a documentary not too long ago. It's on Netflix about trafficking. And I don't think anybody can watch it straight through without getting angry, sick to their stomach,
or nauseated. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were some things that they talked about in there, and it was about a dance studio that was trafficking kids for years. And they were a legitimate dance studio. Some kids never got trafficked because they wanted to keep, but
Right.
and it was in New York, and these kids were going to Saudi Arabia. These kids were going across the country, like all kinds of stuff. And I think I just lost my face, but you guys are just going to have to hear me.
Yep, you're
But
there.
yeah, so I don't know what's happening. I don't care. Um, but yeah, so it's really disturbing to watch and to see that it's just one of those things that it becomes like the weather. There's not like people just say, "Oh, look, it's going to rain today." Oh man, some kid was trafficked, and nobody does anything. And this
Well,
movie really spotlights that.
that's right. Or okay, I'll send a check for $10 or something to a nonprofit and all that's working on it. But you're absolutely right. It's something that people hear about. They don't really take it all that seriously because they
Yeah.
really don't think it's all that bad. The statistics say that it affects almost 27 million victims worldwide at any given time.
I mean, that's 27. These are not just numbers, these are people. Think about it. Think about what 27 million people look like. I can't even picture it. Like, I look at it like when we went to the FC Dallas game just the other day, and I look at it, there was like 20,000 there.
Right.
Could you imagine that a stadium that would hold 27 million people that are trafficked or affected by it? Like, how do we sit here and let this go? How do we sit here and not get involved? How do we sit here and not, because there's a lot of people that are ignorant. I don't mean that in a rude way. Um, I think this movie, if anything, should be an eye opener. I don't think that they don't have to support the people behind the movie. They don't have to believe the entire movie, but they can sit there and watch it and go, "Okay, we got an issue here."
Yeah, and that's why I would encourage people to see this movie, is because your eyes definitely will be opened to something that is not just a Hollywood script. It is real life, folks. It's happening every day. It's happening on our borders. It's happening in our country. It's
Yeah.
happening in 188 countries around the world. They say are the top 188. I mean, it's beyond that, but there are 188 known countries where there's active human trafficking going on, and it can be from the largest countries in the world, like Russia and India and all, to Luxembourg,
Luxembourg.
Liechtenstein, Iceland, small countries. I mean, I'm very familiar with a Caribbean island of Saint Martin, and I would never think that there was human trafficking going on in Saint Martin. But you know what? You walk into massage parlors anywhere in the world, and some of the people that are working in those massage parlors have been human trafficked.
I guaranteed it. Guaranteed. And and that's the thing. It's like we look at it. There's so much different levels of it.
Yep.
You are shipping people to another place and making money off them, regardless what happens to them after that. That's just the initial, drop load. I don't know what is happening with my
Yeah.
internet.
And it completely destroys families that may never see their children again, or they see their children 20 or 30 years later when they cease to be useful to the traffickers.
Well, and a lot of times when that happens, either these kids are killed, these
That's
kids
right.
are unalived, these kids are left for dead, or at that point in the game, they are dead inside.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that people haven't survived and come out with an amazing life. There are some amazing stories that still breaks your heart and thank God that they have, but 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. And I hope one day, because I'm a firm, I still have my plans to get my thing off the ground. And I really absolutely hope to. Unfortunately, I had too much life going on, and I had a couple people that were influential in helping me, and things happen. But I have not given up on that. It will absolutely, and I'm one of those guys that, look, if I say it's going to happen, okay, my timeline might be off, but it's going to happen. So
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the problem too, is the fact that there's a lot of people like you and me that want to get involved in it and all, but there are so many hoops to jump through, so much red tape to go through in order to do something that should be common sense. And it should have been established decades ago too.
Their red tape is ridiculous, by the way. And that came to me when I was starting my thing at a really bad time. So, but it's there. It's not going to go away. It's going to come back, and I'll do what I can because I believe in it.
Yeah.
It's been on my mind for years. So, but yeah, guys, I mean, look, check the movie out. I'm not going to sit here and say that 100% of it is real, because it's not. And matter of fact, the great little thing called the internet. And if you really pay attention to what sources say what is real, you can go ahead and research that. I know some people were complaining about one of the funders I got arrested for something recently. Okay. Yeah. Is it true? We don't know. Did it happen? Maybe. But I go back to Harvey Weinstein. If you're so adamant that you're not going to support this movie because the hypocrisy behind it, then I want you to stop watching 123 films that are out there that he did. So,
yeah. Well, it is not a problem that's going to go away unless we as a society do something about it. Yes. Again, folks, before it leaves the theaters, go get a ticket, go see The Sound of Freedom. And again, stay until the very, very end for the message that's there.
It's shocking me that this movie, in a day and age when movie theaters drop stuff within 30 days, this movie's still out there.
Yeah. it should be seen. Go out and see it, and also come back and see us again next Tuesday, 8 a.m. for another edition of Trash Talk. Bye.